Coming up this week on this Lifestyle Show, Gary's here, and we've got lots to fit in. We're talking about EV news and people driving with Apple Vision Pro headsets on. Really, yep. We've got some music tech news. We've got Windows news and lots more. So let's get straight to Gary. Gary, good evening.
Good evening. He says eating his tea.
Just finishing your meal and everything else because you're rushing in to join us tonight. So
I was, yeah.
Appreciate that. Well, welcome back. We've got quite a few interesting bits and pieces I wanted to talk about tonight. So we've not a lot of Microsoft news, but we have got a bit of Qualcomm Windows type news. We've got an interesting thing crossover between the two areas that I'm certainly focused on at the moment, which is the Microsoft stuff and the music tech actually coming together into one thing in a few weeks' time. So we'll talk about that. There's some EV stuff I wanted to talk to you about as well. And I had a quick mention about Apple Vision Pro as well, because that's released.
Yeah. Which kind of crosses over to the EV bit with some of the
Yeah. So let's start off with the EV stuff then. So on the Apple stuff, so the Apple launched the Apple Vision Pro, which is what $3,500, isn't it?
Yeah.
in the US. Interesting, as Microsoft has obviously got rid of their mixed reality platform, which I read an article, actually I've forgotten where it was now, but say actually the Cliff House was way advanced for its time, and actually some of the stuff that Apple are doing isn't as good as what Microsoft are doing in the Cliff House, and what they should have done is open that up and let it be used by any platform. It's not just the Microsoft headsets, and then it would have perhaps got some traction, but that's not what they choose to do it. But an interesting thing I did read that Microsoft have launched their productivity apps on the headset, which isn't surprising, I suppose.
No, especially since it's kind of been sold as a productivity tool in lots of ways. I know it's got the fun bits as well, but yeah, they're kind of pushing it that way. Yeah. But not in your car though.
Yeah. So what's this about? I've seen a few pictures of this, of some people sat in a car with an Apple Vision Pro on driving.
Yeah, I mean, I actually can. I think I said this a couple of weeks ago, but I could actually see this as the future of how car interfaces work, but not at the moment, because it restricts your field of vision, and it's not the thing to do. And unfortunately, people have been using it to do basically completely distract stuff which is completely distracting from driving, whilst driving in autopilot in Teslas in the States, as sort of YouTube get lots of views type things, but a couple of people have been pulled over by the police, and they're not being treated as though it's a good thing to do, because it's not. You certainly shouldn't be wearing anything which obscures your vision while driving. So but I could see some of the glasses which are coming out which don't do this obscuring your vision as much as the Apple ones, and obviously, as we know, that the field of vision on most of these mixed reality type approaches, certainly the AR type visions, has been very restricted in the past. We've talked about the look through the knights in shining armors face mask, how that was the vertical restriction. So at the moment, that's definitely not an approach which would be good, but certainly there's some glasses coming out now which have very wide ranges of vision, don't actually obscure and just overlay on your natural vision. And I could see that actually being quite a good interface for a car, because you could then be driving ahead and actually have things like your speedo in front of you, which wouldn't distract you. It's because you wouldn't have to look down. Yeah. Everything would be heads up, but in a much better way than the current heads up display, because you wouldn't actually have to even look at that way. Wherever you were looking, you would see your the speedo and etc. in front of you. So I think there's some definite advantages, the possibilities there, but obviously way too early. And the Apple, it proves actually the limitations of the Apple Vision system. I mean, the Apple Vision Pro's got some really clever stuff going for it, but some of the reality versus the ad stuff which people are coming out with has been quite interesting. I mean, there's Marcus Brownlee, famous YouTuber, has got a really good one where he's basically got a side-by-side shot of what the advert shows in terms of this thing where it can show your eyes.
Yeah.
Well, the advert makes it look really, really cool, and then you see the version which he's got on his, and it's definitely not nowhere near the same quality. So yeah, I'll swing the link across that one, but it is quite a good rendition of why there are some challenges. I mean, it's a good bit of tech. I would certainly like one, but not at that price.
No. Yeah, I mean, it's like the HoloLens that, as I said at the time, it just feels like the future. This is what we should have, and it never quite. It was almost there for the HoloLens as a version 1 prototype, and when it could have been what the Apple one is, but yeah, at that price, yeah, it's not. It's a toy, really, isn't it? I mean, I have no need for it, and like I didn't with the HoloLens. Really, it's just a platform that. But yeah, for the Apple one, I've got even less use of it. Interesting. The Microsoft apps, by the way, are all the productivity ones. So Office, Word, Excel, OneNote, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's funny how they're supporting that. But yeah, there's always a thing, isn't there, between the promise and the reality, just as there was with the Microsoft one. Those videos we saw just sort of blew you away. But then I still remember the first time I used that game on there. The murder mystery one, I can't remember what it was called now, but it was just something else. It was just a totally new thing, and I think that's the same with this. So, but Apple don't usually go for experimental products, so they go mainstream, don't they? So I suppose they still have interesting to see what happens. A lot of this early stuff reminded me of Google. What were they called? The Google Glass, just Google Glasses,
Google Glass, Google Glass,
yeah. A lot of. Do you remember there was a huge amount of hype at the time of people wearing those and showing them? This is the people wearing those, and people being videoed wearing them, and that kind of thing. It kind of that hype at the time, and that kind of never lived up to it. So whether this will, we'll have to wait and see. But I did see pictures of people sat in cafes with them on and that kind of thing, which looked quite funny, but. If it goes mainstream, then that won't look funny. It'll just be what it is. But I can't see that this generation of hardware will be funny. But will be there. But you never know. Of course, what I'm going to wait for is Google's reply to this, because surely Google have got to be working on an Android type version of this. They're not just going to totally let Apple own that market, are they? So
no, I can't imagine they would. So yeah, and then maybe Microsoft can come back in.
Yeah, well, I think
better all you.
What Microsoft will do is their usual thing now, isn't it? Of offer the platform, the dev tools, the maybe the what do they call it? The spatial computing, relational computing type stuff for those other platforms. But maybe that when there'll be an Android one, maybe there's the next one, or maybe someone like obviously Meta heavily in down this with the Quest and everything else, so maybe there'll be some kind of version that comes from that side. That's what we really need, is a bit of competition to drive the pricing down. But an interesting toy would be nice to play with, but certainly I can think of better things to spend $3,500 on at the moment, like $3,500 worth of keyboards or something equally good like that. Now, also, while we're on EVs, I wanted to. You took a car out at the weekend, didn't you? That I wanted to find out how you got on with.
Yeah, so following on, I'm still on the quest for the perfect family EV, and I took an ID Buzz out at the weekend, which is the modern take on the old VW camper van. Which I have to say looks great on the outside, very very cute, and the girls loved actually getting in and out of it, and all that stuff. It was really good. But what really drove me crazy was the software, and being in this industry myself and being a software developer, I couldn't believe that something as buggy as that had actually got out to the real world. For example, I was driving along the road and I tried to put it into cruise control, and it said, "Can't do this. The driver's seatbelt is unfastened." Well, the driver's seatbelt was fastened, and I've actually got to where I was getting to, and I looked around and I realised that one of the side doors was actually slightly open. Shut that message then went away, undid my seat belt, and they then said the back door is open.
Oh.
So, and the user interface was just, I mean, now caveat this by saying there is a new version of the user interface about to come out, which is from all accounts way better, and they've actually put some effort into it. But yeah, but there was also things like they have a voice assistant called which you say "Hey ID" to get open, and it just kept triggering left, right, and centre. I don't know if that ID key phrase is just a really poor one to have chosen, but every conversation which was going on in the car was triggering the voice assistant. And that can do things like open windows and stuff, and things were starting to go up and down.
Oh, no.
It was. I mean, other than that, a great car to drive, typical EV to drive, and space wise, you can't beat it. I mean, the amount of space in the boot. Although it is really, one thing was really funny there is if you look in the boot of the ID Buzz, which is massive, there are actually cup holders and armrests in the boot, but no seats. And you think, well, this is, did they make this to be a 7-seater or 8-seater, whatever, 6-seater? And it's obvious there was supposed to, it looks like there should have been a third row of seats in there. And I did a bit of digging into this, and it turns out this is down to the curb weight. So if you have a battery in electric vehicles, they can be quite heavy, although they are getting lighter all the time. So this is not going to be a long-term problem, but so they're quite heavy. And I think that they actually built this car without really checking their facts and figures, because basically the curb weight is such that if you were to put 7 adults in it, you'd be over the curb weight on the what the legislation treats as an average adult. Now it would probably work if it was kids, but they can't guarantee you won't put adults in the seats. So
yeah.
So I think they were actually probably banned from actually adding the extra seats because of the curb weight restrictions. Having done the maths, so that's quite an interesting sort of not actually thinking through your design process 100%. But yeah, but other than that, I mean, really clever car, and the fact that back seats fold flat with the load area, so you've got absolutely massive van. Well, it is van basically under the skin, but van-like load space, which you can definitely sleep in. I mean, you could lay down on the back of that quite happily. And there are camper conversions, although again the camper conversions are being restricted a little bit by the chassis strength and the ability to hold low. But yeah, clever stuff. Widest bench seat of any thing which is classed as a car. I mean, I say it really is a van under the skin, but and there is a commercial version of it as well. Some clever stuff. I mean, I moaned about the software, but I did like the fact that you get in, there's a seat sensor which turns it on, much like a Tesla. Actually, Tesla does this as well, so you can just put it in gear and drive away. You don't have to think about turning it on. It knows you've got the key, just sitting in it, it turns on, and you're ready to go. They do slightly be worrying me with kids if they got if someone had the key nearby and they got in, and could they?
Yeah,
yeah. But I'm sure, but I think there is a weight sensor in there, so I don't think if you're particularly light, it would actually trigger. But yeah, there's some clever stuff in there. There's some one thing I did like. It has remote parking. So parking memory. So you know these auto park things you can do. This one actually is quite interesting, because basically you reverse it. You basically start the process to reverse into a slot, and you then sort of press the memory button, and then the next time you approach that parking space, be it your garage or up your drive, it will repeat all the steering maneuvers you made to get into that space.
Right. It's like a macro for your car.
Yeah, it's like a macro
Excel macro for your car. Yeah.
And it worked. I mean, it definitely worked, and you could get into quite tight spaces. So quite interesting. I mean, countering that slightly, it also has very aggressive emergency braking if it thinks you're going to hit something, and it thinks you're going to hit something if you're quite a good few feet away from it, or it seemed to anyway. So yeah, some positives and negatives. I mean, yeah, the concept is great. I mean, the idea of a minivan, I like the concept of minivans. I think we've gone too SUV, and we ought to go back to MVVs and all those shapes and sizes. There's a feeling in the industry, or the industry thinks that nobody wants to buy MPVs and they only want to buy SUVs. And yet, if you every time I talk to people about them who've got families, they'd much rather have an MPV. They'd rather have something more load space, more space inside, and not necessarily the SUV proportions. So it's interesting that there seems to be a disconnect between what people seem to say want and what people buy. And maybe that's because you just can't buy MPVs nowadays.
Yeah. Well, what that's the other thing I noticed. What happened to estate cars? Because I mean, when my kids were young, I had an estate car, a Volvo Estate. It was absolutely brilliant. You could fit loads of stuff in there.
Yeah.
It was perfect for me. You could fit a double pram in there, no problem. But obviously, I don't need it now, so I haven't got one.
Yeah.
But you don't see them around as much.
No, and they went because people. I mean, generally people do like the high sitting position SUVs give. So that's actually one of the selling points of them. And that's basically what's happened. You've got the crossovers and the SUVs have taken over from the estates. Although the estates are coming back. I noticed that, well, certainly the MG5, which is the only estate EV, sells in very high numbers. And a couple of the other manufacturers are starting to pick up on that and are thinking bringing estate cars back, or station wagons back, as they're called. So yeah, it's interesting, but you're right. Estates kind of vanished. They were the family car of their time, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Lower.
used to like my Volvo. Yeah, it was good. Yeah. So it's interesting, isn't it, that the software has become such integral part of a car.
Yeah, it is
system now. That a few years ago, software was sort of the only bits of software was maybe your cassette player. But yeah, that now it's an integral part of the system, and something. Well, even petrol on my car now, it's all software driven on the UIs, and you can control the lane stuff and even the engine mapping all through software. So yeah, it is an integral part of the system now, and so they've got to have the same quality control, if not more. You can maybe handle your teams crashing, but you can't. What you can't handle is maybe your safety system's not working correctly, or like you said, your cruise control. But not even worse than that, if you were trying to start your car and it said your seatbelt was off and it was on and because of a bug, all that kind of thing. It's just they can't afford those issues.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, so software. Well, it's like anything now, isn't it? The software is the key to all of it now. Smart homes, everything. It's all software driven, isn't it?
Yes, scarily so sometimes. And in the industry, I do worry about some of the things we see, some of the reliability and reliance on certain systems.
Yeah. Talking of software, we did get we had one build last week, and that was a beta build, which was 22635 .3139, because they're all 22635, aren't they? These builds just had a couple of fixes in it, so I don't know what's happened. I didn't see any tweets from the insider team, but there was no dev or canary build last week, so no new builds to test. But I did read a couple of reports that with the next version of Windows, which still might be called Windows 12, but I think it's looking more like Windows 11. It'll be 24H2, because Qualcomm have confirmed that the Snapdragon X Elite chipset will be released this in the middle of this year with this new version of Windows, which is based on the platform I think that's on Dev and Canary at the moment. It may have the AI type functionality into it, so there may be some rebranding, so maybe Windows 11 with Copilot or something like that. There's bound to be something in there, but these will be the ARM-powered devices that will include Microsoft's Surface range. So we may see the ARM-powered Surface Pro 10. It would be, wouldn't it? Surface laptop. Or forgot which one they're on now, and that maybe a Surface Go 4, not like this one, but with the Qualcomm processor in it as well, which is really what we wanted last year. I'm very happy with my device, but I'd be interested to see what the difference to battery life is and everything else. But that'll be this new processor and the new platform for Windows, because as we know, the platform isn't the version. the marketing version of essentially the platform is underneath, and so we'll get that first. So that will be 24H2. So maybe that's why we're not seeing any bills at the moment. They're saving these up to something. I mean, I don't know if there's any announcements, any events coming up. I'm not sure there is, but they always do these separately anyway, don't they? So there's not like they choose an existing event. But I'm interested to try them. Especially some of the ARM-based ones, because I've not had an ARM-based Windows device since my Windows RT, which again I did like, but no longer supported. Never really worked. But anyway, never really worked as in a product brand. It worked for me. I still think it would be different now. I don't think people. It used to be Chrome and iTunes, wasn't it? And now Edge is the same. You could probably install Chrome, no problem. iTunes, people don't install iTunes anymore, do they? So, there is an iTunes in the Windows Store, so on the Microsoft Store. But anyway, these will be full. These won't be special versions of Windows. This will just be the same version. But, as Richard pointed out last year, his dev box didn't perform that well. It started off okay and had a lot of bugs in it, but I guess that's what this new platform is for. They'll test it on there, and then we'll see later in the year. There's something else coming up interesting as well that I found out in the new version of Windows, and crossing over between things I'm interested in is MIDI 2.0. I mentioned it a few weeks ago, I think. There's been quite a bit of MIDI 2.0 stuff, which is the MIDI is the communication protocol for musical instruments. It stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. Pioneered by Sequential and Yamaha, Dave Smith at Sequential in 83, something like that. It's an old protocol, especially as far as computer or modern communication protocols. It's a really old protocol and still in use today. The DIN plugs used in USB, MIDI over USB, but MIDI 2.0 is recently been ratified, has a load more functionality to it, like real-time controls and all that kind of thing. But I found out recently Microsoft are actually supporting MIDI 2.0. And through an open source implementation as well. So there's actually a project on GitHub, which is that implementation. It works currently on Canary. So you can try it on Canary. And there are a few sort of beta versions of different platforms, different music software that supports it. But there's quite a few instruments that support it as well, from Korg and others. So what we're going to try and do is get Pete Brown from Microsoft, who I think is the chair of the MIDI 2.0 group and lead of the MIDI project. But Microsoft are rewriting the MIDI stack for Windows completely, including MIDI 2.0. So I think they're going for a ground up with it. And you may remember some of the issues that I've talked about in the past with some Korg devices having limitations on channel slots and things like that. That all goes away with this new MIDI implementation. So we're going to try and get Pete on the show in a few weeks' time to talk about MIDI 2.0 and the new stack in Windows and what that means, because I think it's more than just music as well. It could be used for other controllers type things. I think there's light controllers use it and all sorts of things. So it's going to be quite interesting to talk to Pete about MIDI 2.0 and just how they're rewriting this MIDI stack for Windows, especially with it being open source as well. So that's quite interesting. So we're going to talk about that. So anybody's got any questions about MIDI 2.0, let me know, because I can put them to Pete, and I have to gen up on MIDI 2.0. I've seen some of it, and it's pretty powerful stuff. So I haven't got anything that supports it at the moment, but hopefully in the next year we'll start to see some software that supports it as well. So there's some hardware stuff's already out, but some software, but we're waiting for the software. So good to see Microsoft supporting that. I think Apple already supports it on Mac, so but it's coming to Windows as well with a whole rewrite. So we'll be talking about that. So it's well worth sending your questions in if you've got anything on MIDI 2.0. It's amazing how these little DIN sockets. I think I've got one on my desk here. These little DIN sockets here are still being used. And have not changed in 40 odd years.
But they work.
Yes, that's why. Yeah. And of course, that's what made the Atari ST so popular with musicians, wasn't it? Because it had those interfaces built into it.
Yeah. And early home automation as well. Actually, we used to use MIDI for some of the home automation stuff in back in the day. So that was fun.
Yes, because I know some light controllers use it, some stage light type things, and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, similar protocols. Yeah.
And we're still using MIDI today with those. You may get like a device like I've got this ModWave here that uses USB, but it actually runs USB. It runs MIDI over the USB, and it's got MIDI ports as well. So yeah, it's amazing how I can't think of many other comms protocols that are still going from that era. But it's all got MIDI 2.0, which is backwards compatible with MIDI 1.0 as well. So Microsoft are building all that into Windows, both layers of that. So we'll be talking about that. So any questions on that, let me know.
Looking forward to that one. This could be really good.
Yeah, Pete's great. He's been at Microsoft a long time, hasn't he?
Has,
yeah. So and I think he's a musician as well, isn't he? So I'd be interested to talk about that. I did a new article and video last week, which is available, which is crafting FM sounds on the Korg ModWave. So I've done a Korg ModWave video, and that's been proving to be popular. So if you've got one of those synths, I've gone into sort of a tutorial on how to create FM sounds, which is the X7 type 80 sounds, but and a lot more, but with the ModWave. So it's a different instrument, but it can be used to create some very interesting sounds, FM sounds. So I've got a guide on that. Interesting that I noticed a big effect of the Google Discovery. So I use the Google. So I think it's just on the Samsung phone. You just swipe left and it has your Discovery, which I always find it's obviously it's using your browser histories and all that kind of thing to build up that list of interest things that you search from. But this article that I did actually turned up on there on mine, which I didn't think too much of it, because I thought, I'm always perhaps searching for my own stuff, to see where it's rated and everything. But actually, it turns out it has a big effect when I get there. So I did see a huge spike in traffic when it did that. So that was quite interesting if I could work out how on earth it gets on there. That'd be great. But I guess that's the secret.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Yes, I guess that's one of those things. I'm sure there's plenty of SEO people that will tell you, the best practice and things like that. But I've always found I just write the stuff that I'm interested in, and then if anybody else is just interested in it, that's great. But it's interesting. I sort of pop up myself. So yeah, that was quite funny. So anyway, there's the articles, the video, and some downloads for some free sounds using FM on the ModWave as well. So they're all available. I've got to my next guide coming up on there. Interesting to find that YouTube, from being sort of the worst cut of comments on there, has matured as a platform now, some point where it's actually probably the best community really that you away from most of the interaction I used to have was on Twitter. That's kind of since it become X and all the changes, I've sort of that's dropped off to nothing. But YouTube there's quite a lot of stuff on there, so a lot of engagement and people, a bit of community on there now. So interesting how that's moved over onto there. I don't know if that's just because of the content or it's just things in general. I don't know. You've got your YouTube channel. You found that you get some good engagement on there now.
Yeah, I get some good chats on there now, with comments and things, and probably not quite so much on the EV stuff. And obviously there's still that huge amount of negativity against EVs, which you do get coming up in the chats. But yeah, it's a bit, so sometimes you just ignore that. But yeah, I get some nice conversations. Although, so that's good.
Yeah, and you do wonder why, if you're anti-EV, why you're watching an
EV channels,
owner channel.
Yeah, why would you watch a channel called EV owner if you hate EV? So, and I've got no problems. I really have no problems with anybody who really doesn't want to drive an EV. They don't have to. There's no reason you're going to have to drive an EV at the moment. I would like people to do so because it has some benefits, but yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a set. It's a weird strange world we live in, isn't it? Where sometimes if you're pro this, then you have to be anti that, and there isn't the case of that. It's just, for me, it's just courses for courses. It's the same with sort of brands and things like that. Is some people pro one brand, hate another brand, and all that kind of thing. But I think life's too short for that. Right, so I think that was everything I had for this week's show. It's been quiet on the Microsoft news, but I did like the pictures I saw with the Apple Pro with people driving the Tesla on it. I did think of you when I saw those pictures.
Yeah, don't think I'll do that.
Yeah, remember, kids, don't drive with your headset on.
Yeah, especially watching movies, which is apparently what some of them was doing.
So if you want to get in touch with us, you can email me, ian@thedigital-lifestyle.com, and if you've got anything on for Pete or any other subject, I'm trying to get on guests from Korg and some other technology areas as well, so let me know. Gary, where can we find you?
You can find me the EV Owner channel on YouTube. I might plug that one as well, and at Gary WMA virtually everywhere else.
Excellent stuff. We'll be back same time, same place next week, and we'll see you then.
Take care.